Welcome back, legends, to another Uncommon Man podcast. It is the first one of 2025, and it is Quitters Week, baby. It is the time when New Year's resolutions start to fade. Those gym memberships are already starting to get dusty on the shelf. And we wanted to share some things about why achievement alone leaves you empty. And neither of the lads that are here today are going to argue the fact that money doesn't help. That money is not the main cause of leaving you empty. We're not going to be talking about how you're making more or why it's important to have money. We're going to talk about the deeper things. This is for the guys that everything looks good on paper. They feel like they've made it, or they feel like that next level of success is just an inch away. Yet the business looks all good, but everything at home is kind of starting to fall by the wayside. Use the example of, builders who are out there building everybody else's dream homes while they're losing their own. They've got this project completion mentality. Everything's going well, yet their life is completely incomplete. Broken good business systems, but broken personal systems. So we want to dive into some of the hidden costs and ways to recognize it in your own life, and then things that you can actually do about. Because let's be honest, it's great to find out, get some clarity on truth of where we are, but it pretty much sucks when we find out, fuck, you're right, my life isn't as good as I thought it was. Now what do I do? So we're going to give you some really cool strategies and some resources that you can get for this. And if you're like me and you're slightly ADD and you just want to get straight to the resources, you can jump to the group that we've created. We'll put a nice structure in there so it's really easy to find everything. We'll put the link in the bottom of the show notes for you guys as well. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Really looking forward to kicking off the year with you. So I guess, Nick, I kind of want to start with you, mate. What are some of the hidden costs that you have seen from, I'm going to use the term AKA like uber successful guys, the kind of success that we've been brought up to look at or look up to, and the same thing that I guess unconsciously many people look to is like, oh, that guy's doing really well because he's got the Lambo or the boat or the nice house or the big revenue and all sorts of those things. What do you see as the little hidden costs that aren't so little sometimes?
I think it's so difficult sometimes just standing in front of those people just because of how they portray themselves and the presence, because it's this big mask of success and ease, and sometimes it's joy and it seems very nonchalant. But having sat down with a couple of those individuals over the years, what I found is they've been able to build this home for everyone else, but they feel like they are standing on the outside looking in, that they don't get to experience what they've built. And it's like being a bystander in this beautiful space that you've cultivated for everyone else. Everyone else is flourishing. Everyone else feels like, well, their seeds have been planted and they can harvest year after year after year. But yeah, you're the person that did all the work, and you actually don't necessarily know how to enjoy it. You don't know how to experience it. I find that's one of the key things that arises in most of these conversations with these individuals. It's like, I actually don't know how to enjoy my success. I don't know how to enjoy what I've built at the end of the day.
Just like a quick question. Do you kind of see it changing in this world? Like, do you see it from an energetic point of view or an observational point of view of like that's changing in guys?
I think that from what I've maybe seen over the last couple of years is the amount of space that has been, created through systems, through AI, through, this remote hybrid working setup. Individuals have to sit with themselves more and more, and they either have the opportunity to explore themselves and they can find a sense of peace with that, or they find ways to avoid themselves through, I'm going to be very honest, like fuckery. They're going to go fuck around and they're going to go avoid themselves and go find out. And then that's where the addiction comes in, or where they're looking for dopamine, where they're trying to find something outside of themselves to help them not feel what's inside and avoid that feeling over and over again. And I think that there's been two sets of people. One, some that have been able to stand in front and be like, well, look, I need to see these things. I'm willing to sit with this and I'm willing to explore this. And then majority of individuals are just like, I don't want to do that. Why on earth would I want to pop my ego bubble and have to like really look at myself versus just have a great time, and I can carry on doing this for however long I want to and avoid that feeling.
It's really funny talking about that, like going through kind of all the data, all the testimonials. I've had thousands of guys go through our program, and it's like, what are the one of the kind of big outcomes that have really impacted our guys, or that were not necessarily their original goal? And across the board, there is two things. There's like guys getting really cool leadership roles, but not just in business, but also like in their family. They're becoming more of a leader in their family, and their wife and their kids are really recognizing that. But also just simply they're making more and they've got more time off. And the really interesting thing is that more time off, yeah, we all assume it's a great thing, but it's a void, right? And sometimes that void unconsciously gets filled because we don't want to burst that bubble, as you say. Like, I love the idea. I live that idea of make more while working less so I can live deeper. Like, that is the kind of, like, that's what we want to do, right? And that's what a lot of our guys, we help get them there. But there's that dangerous black hole of like, shit, I've got more time on my hand. What do I do now? Ooh, I've got more money as well. Ooh, maybe it's a race car fetish. Maybe it's a problem like me and you've got a bike fetish. Maybe it's a cocaine fetish, something that's not as healthy. And it's interesting watching how we distract ourselves from that, taking that time, being like, I've got all this free time. Why don't I spend some time actually thinking and leveraging the next thing? And I think from I use the word scaling in terms of like scaling your life or scaling your business. It's investing time and thought that creates momentum. And you talk to anybody along the line, they're like, it wasn't until my 40s and my 50s that I really started to dig in and kind of started seeing these opportunities come along. But it's interesting, the more time you give somebody, the faster they become successful. Like, as long as I've got a base of safety and security, like money's coming in, it's funny, you take that time and it's like, if they can not avoid thinking and reflecting, they just have quantum leaps in success because they suddenly become an opportunity generator, or they go, man, that's a great idea, or they apply their skill set in a really, really neat and unique way. And suddenly everything in their life, nothing moves in a linear way. They have these massive jumps. So I'm interested in hearing from you, Harry, that for the guys, because, mate, you are the time hack king. You are the guy that basically gets our guys, a minimum of 10 hours back pretty much as soon as they kick off with us. What do you see as the voidal holes that get filled up with things when these guys get their time back? Or what do you see as the hidden costs that they've got going on in their life before they even start?
I think most people know where their time goes. Like, if before we get to the point of being able to save them the time, if they're feeling like they're always busy, like they're going from one task to the other, and they're being busy but not so productive, like, just if all you could do is go through your calendar and get rid of the stuff that isn't productive in some capacity, then you would inherently save so much time. But like you said, the problem is we then fill that time with other stuff, feeling like, well, being busy is a prerequisite to success, to this thing to more money, to this thing that I'm trying to achieve. So if I'm not busy, then I'm being lazy, I'm not utilizing my time and my resources, or like the ship's going to sink. If I'm not running around, if I'm not like back to back with, doing these sales calls, running a new marketing campaign, having these meetings, then everything's going to fucking fall apart, right? And then there's that level of stress. Like, I remember coaching this one guy, and that was his goal. Like, he was running a business that was like, average level of success. And he was always stressed, always angry. When he got home, he was like always thinking in work mode. And like, after a couple of months together, we realized that he had been in this state of just constant busyness and stress in the biggest growth periods of his business. And so he had tied subconsciously this feeling of being busy, being stressed to success. And so in his mind, if he wasn't feeling like that, then the business wasn't growing. He wasn't making money. Therefore, he couldn't provide the money for the family. He wasn't then a good father or a good husband, and the world was going to end. And so if there was the slightest hint at him not being busy as all buggery and stressed to the eyeballs, then that was a sign of being unsuccessful and about to go down in wealth and business. And so would try his heart out to make sure that his stress and busyness was always through the roof. Right?
That's classic, eh?
And it's a hard thing to break, right? Like you've got to have a lot of trust in your process and in the things that you are doing, that where you're putting that time, that it is the task that makes you all the money. Because you say, cool, I'm just going to work 2 hours a day. But if you spend 2 hours a day just responding to emails and just fucking around and not doing the stuff that moves the needle, well, then you will go backwards personally and professionally, right?
So this is super interesting. You mentioned that. I got two things in this. One of a personal experience. I recently deleted like social media off my phone. So I was like, and it's almost like my body is used to a certain amount of screen time. So now that a certain amount's gone, it's trying to find other things to fill it with. So I'll be on my training peaks, checking my fitness levels like 5 times a day. I'm like, dude, you haven't done anything more. Like your fitness level hasn't changed since this morning. And I'm like, what the fuck? And suddenly now I'm more on Telegram in the mastermind chat, doing some trades. I'm like, holy shit. It's like a vacuum. And I'm a huge fan of like universal laws. And one of the laws that I love is like Parkinson's law. Like a task will take as long as you give it or allocate to it. And I go through, like I've got all my guys, I've got their 90-day game plans, right? And I'm looking at what they want to achieve in the next 6 months, 3 months, 90 days, 3 years, 10 years. And I'm looking through, and what I am trying to find is the biggest needle mover that we can like pull on that's going to impact 4 or 5 of the goals at the same time. And across the board, 2025, by the way, this is really interesting. Across the board, everybody's already feeling like the year's full. So I sat everybody down. I said, everybody needs a 12-month calendar now. And I want you to put your stuff on it before you put any of the business. Because they're like, fuck, this year just feels like it's already like over. It's already traveling too fast. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. So let's do that first. Do your year calendar. Got all that stuff in. And all of them are there. And they've got great income goals, sort of 350 plus for the year. And all of them came down to, I want to be working 4 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever it is. And so, like you mentioned, the time audit piece, I go through with these guys. I'm like, cool. So if I held it, I just asked this question. If I held a gun to your head today, right, how would you make, let's say, $400,000 or start making that $400,000 tomorrow, only working 3 days a week? You got a gun to your head, remember? And he's like, okay, cool. Suddenly, what happens? They're like, well, I just eliminate all that, and I'd stop doing that, and I'll stop doing that, and that doesn't matter. And I'm like, cool. Now you know your priority tasks. If I say you've got 3 days to do them, you'll get it done in 3 days. If you've got 5, you get it done in 5. But what generally happens, and the guys listening really need to put this into their life, because what happens is they go, I'll do 4 days on my calendar, but I'll leave Friday for overfill. Just the old just in cases. I'm like, no, Friday's golf, motherfucker. Or Friday's out with the family. Like, you're gone. There is no computer. It's like technology has disappeared from your world. There is no business. There is no technology. There's no phone. You're out. There's no chance for you to overflow. So you better get as efficient as hell and get that shit done by Thursday afternoon. And funnily enough, what happens? You get super efficient. Like, suddenly, the things that you used to think mattered don't. You spend less time with people who suck up your time. You delegate way better. You're more precise with your leadership. All of those things change. And it just blows me away that we continue to do things thinking we need 5 days a week or 7 days a week or 80-hour work weeks and things like that. I'm like, no, you just don't. And don't get me wrong, some things are money for time. But if you want to build a house, someone's got to hit the hammers in, hit the nails in, and that takes time. But there are so many elements of our life where we waste time that Parkinson's law, if you just utilize it, it's good to go. Have you seen that? Have you guys seen that in your own world in any way?
Definitely in elements.
There you go. You can go first. No, go for it. Go for it.
I was gonna say definitely in elements. Like there's like when you think something is going to be more of a pain in the ass task, you're like, oh, I'm not really like tech is a thing for me. Like we all know I hate tech, so like I will avoid it to the nth degree as much as I possibly can. And sometimes I'm justified in that because I try to do it and I get hit so many roadblocks that I'm just like this thing, I'm going to find every other way to do it. But other times it'll take all of like 5 minutes. I'm like, this has been playing on my head of like, oh, I need to do this thing. I need to do this thing for the past like week, if not longer, taking up that capacity when it took me all of 5 minutes. Like, oh, sweet. That was easy.
Yeah. I completely agree with you there. What about you, Nick?
I think for me personally, it's like a dance between like what's happening in life. One of my values is obviously family, and sometimes you forget how much you can get done in those pockets of time when you at least have a very clear goal that's set. So like we've got an 8-month-old at the moment, which takes up your entire life basically. So it's a thing of, if I've got 15 minutes here and I need to send 2 emails, I can do that. If I've prepped and I know who I'm going to send that to. And those aren't just emails to send for shits and giggles. There's a clear intent that aligns with a bigger goal and an objective and a needle moving task. And it's that whole thing, it's so funny you saying that. And you asked that question. I had a client last week that said, I want to take off 30 days before my child is born, just to like get my business up and running and get all these things in place and tick all these boxes. And I just said, well, do you not have like 10-15 minutes today? And I was like, yes. I said, well, why don't you start with some of those tasks now to start building momentum? And I said, how clear are you on those objectives? Because like you quoted the law there, that's exactly the same thing that I said, that you're going to fill that time with absolute shit. You will find things to be busy with, and you're going to get nowhere within your busyness. So it's that whole thing of, well, if you don't have the clear intention, if you don't know what that plan looks like, and if you're not very focused on those key moving items, you're not going to get anywhere. You're going to just be spinning your wheels and exhausting yourself at the end of the day.
And I think that specificity allows you to be very blunt with yourself about if you were busy or were you productive. Because if you've got this clear metric of like, did I send the 2 emails? It's not like, oh yeah, but I typed them, but I did this. Like, did you hit the send button, dude? Like it's yes or no. And it's like, if you're accumulating weeks, days and weeks of no, I didn't, but you're feeling stressed out and going here, there, and everywhere throughout the process, it's like, well, that's why. Because there's no like specificity as to what you need to do, and then the follow through of actually doing it.
I wish I could say I was an absolute king at this, but I have times where I'm like just so on fire. The last 3 days have been those days, as I said, it feels like I've been on cocaine. Never taken cocaine, so I don't actually know the feeling, but I feel like maybe meth. I haven't taken meth either, so that doesn't work. But anyway, I've been really super like just attentive to things and like bam, 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 out of the office. Say good day to the kid, back in the office, bam, 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 bam. But I'm like, there's times where I'm like, just staring at the screen, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, what? Where on earth did the last hour go? I'm like, how many times does that happen? That keyboard warrior lifestyle, and the science on flow is phenomenal, right? It's like 45 minutes max. Get the hell out, sunshine, rest, walk. Do it. And I look at how I spoke to the guys on the Abundant call today about the rhythm and flow of life. Take seasons, for example. Like in winter, you kind of meant to go into hibernate, and it's a little bit harder to get motivated. It's harder to get out in the morning. Yet we just push. We try to create this linear growth line. And in summer, it's like, oh no, don't, I work 9 to 5. It's like, well, hang on, how good are you feeling, man? I am pumping out work at the moment. Then tell the missus or tell the family, you know what? I'm going to charge this week so hard, and I'm going to take an extra couple of days off next week, recharge. I do that with my weeks. Hammer at the start. Then by the time Thursday comes, which is tomorrow, funnily enough, I'm getting tired. I just peter off and then come back again Monday, and I'll be back on the meth again. It's an interesting thing. But I look at like sales is a really good example, like real estate or anything like that. And they feel like they're available 24/7 to the clients. They're closing deals, but missing home life. They're, a strong professional network, but like a weak personal network. And basically, they're experts in negotiation, but kind of failing at the navigation of life. And it's really interesting watching people in sales because it can be something that you can just allow to be on continuously. And again, it's like, I like to think of hustle as extremely precise and like in the moment doing it, but actually hustle is more this long-winded, really drawn out, horrible fucking endurance race rather than just going to the gym, lifting heavy, short, get in, get out. And I'm like, if you just change that, the whole game changes. Really does. And on that note, like, how do you reckon kind of the traditional or the old hustle mindset is kind of outdated, and how do you see it changing, I guess, if you're seeing it changing?
I feel like it'll have to change because, especially when it comes to being a parent, like being a father, now for the majority of people, you can't get away with one income for a household, right? So the partner needs to work. And so that means now household duties, parent duties are now split as well. So you can't just work the entire time for most guys. So I feel like guys will eventually get to the point where they even burn themselves out so much or start to realize that maybe that old value that was instilled in everybody, that like working hard and high work ethic is the prerequisite to success, to everything that you want, that maybe that's not the case. Like there's plenty of hardworking poor people. Like it helps you, but if you're working on a low leverage activity or in a low leverage job, it's not going to be the key to what you want. And so there'll be some people that kind of unlock that way of thinking of how do I, earn that money? How do I have that stuff with the least amount? And I know Robert Kiyosaki in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad terms that as the difference between rich people and poor people. Poor people are, I don't have the time, the money, the resource. But then the rich people, or like the rich way of thinking, is how can I? Yeah. How can I make that money in less time? How can I like have that level of business and that success and still be present for my kids, still be able to take my son to all of his sporting practices and be there for the game, still be able to do these other things that I value, right? And so I think also being able to like having your values at the forefront is super important. Like one thing that's been eye-opening to me recently, and I view things differently now, is like previously like idolizing Alex Hormozi, right? In his business stuff, like his knowledge, like everything. Dude's fucking insane, right? And a lot of the stuff that he preaches, that he talks about, like that he's got him to where he is now and will continue to get him to where he wants to go, to having $1 billion company within the next 5-6 years. Insane. But when you look at the dude, like his passion and his value is in work. Like that's where he gets his fulfillment from, which is amazing, right? And if that's where you get yours from, then beautiful, go for it. But if you get your fulfillment from your family or from something else, and you're trying to apply his work ethic to that, you'll get to a point where you're just not fulfilled, you're upset and you're resentful, and like life's just not a great place. So that's my take.
Mate, it's not a false guru fallacy, because I do enjoy the internet for its motivation, for inspiration from people, what they've achieved and those sorts of things. But it's the old question we ask our guys: are you going closer or are you going for more? And they're like, closer to what? I'm like, exactly. What are you getting closer to? Like, for you, what is your version of success? What is your version of prosperity? And that's like that 3 pillars that we talk about. It's like you've got health, you've got the Hermetic principles, and then you've got vision. And for every single person, that center where they all collide, it's totally different for everybody. And I really like that. And yeah, I think most people have an element of money in there, and that's understandable in this world. But I think that I'll share a story like from today. A client has changed their goals to 3 years, and it has changed the entire level of their life, because they're not thinking about tomorrow and how much money do I make tomorrow, and everything's a rush and everything's busy. It's something like, I've got time. I can enjoy the process on the way. These are the things that I'm going to achieve. So suddenly her whole life's just expanded in that one moment. And I'm like, oh, there you go. You just needed to change and thing. And now they've got something that they're moving closer to. I want to go back to your thing about the poor mentality versus the wealthy mentality, because something I changed in my own thinking was like, cool, making money is still one of my goals. I want to make more money. I want to support my family and those sorts of things. So I asked myself the question, what problems do I need to solve in order for people to pay me a higher level of wealth or whatever it is? Mowing people's lawn, helpful, love being outside, but it doesn't solve a really big problem for people. Fixing somebody's marriage in a very short space of time, big problem, worth a lot to people. Giving them their life back, having them scale their business, whatever it is, if you can solve a bigger problem, funnily enough, the value is bigger, so you get paid more. And that is definitely that was a mindset shift that I had to have in my life when I first started coaching. And I was, I used to coach athletes, just kids and, guys at the kind of high school level of sport, to them fixing people's backs because I screwed my own, and then realizing that even though pain is high, it wasn't a high value thing. And so I started moving on. How do I solve another problem? How do I solve another problem? What do I got to learn to do that? What do I got to experience? And suddenly you move on, you're like, oh, now you're solving bigger problems. Funnily enough, people pay you more to solve bigger problems. It's a great way to think. Well, it has been for me. I'm biased.
What do you think's given you the power to do that? Because I feel like a lot of people could identify, rich people problems, if we call them that, or high paying problems. But then what's given you the confidence to then pursue that as like, I've got the ability to help solve this for someone else?
Yeah, that's a valid question. I think even just that path along the way of trying to, originally it was trying to make more money. So you come up against a whole bunch of challenges just in that yourself. So you have to become better, whether it's better at business, whether it's better at sales, whether it's better at marketing, whether it's better at your delivery, whatever it is. The sad thing, I think, in our world, especially with the internet, is you could just get better at sales and marketing and not have a better deliverable. The cool thing is I've always sucked at sales and marketing. So I've just had to be good at what I do. And as time got on and I got more confident and people started getting these different results. So I'd literally sit with someone and be, okay, man, cool. How's this impacted you? How's that changed your life? Cool. What was most helpful about that? Okay. If there was, that Hormozy question you shared with me a couple of years ago was like, if I was to take everything away, what's the one thing you would keep? And just dialing that in more and more and more to the point where now, 5,000 guys down the track, sounds like a bit of a gay OnlyFans, but it's like we have such a clear structure to how things work. It's, hey, dude, just follow this yellow brick road and you'll be sweet. And when you're not, let's talk about it and find out why you're not. and just get you back on the yellow brick road. And don't get me wrong, some people still fuck up, and that's, it happens very rarely. But I think that's been the biggest thing that's given me confidence. And then my own life, just fucking up enough things to be like, oh, that would have been smarter if I'd done that way. I think, I've shared it. I have never ever shared this publicly. I've only shared it with a couple of people, but losing $1 million was pretty hard. Like, that was a really tough time in my life, and watching that play out, I'm like, damn, what am I going to do now? And that, when you're meant to be the provider, the father, the husband, and you go through that, you got to check all those tools that you've been saying work for people and helping people through, and go, okay, cool. All right, motherfucker. Like, what's up now? No, are you going to make this work, or are you going to crawl into your hole? Like, what are you going to pull out of your toolbox? So that's been a really valuable experience to me. Would I prefer to have $1 million? I don't know. It'd be nice. It'd be helpful. But it certainly gave me a lot to chew on. So yeah, if that helps, don't go losing $1 million. Just let me teach you whatever I learned from that, and you can go on from there.
Let other people lose the money first.
Yeah, exactly. Look at that. Somebody else make mistakes. What about you, Nick?
I think I've got a different angle, because I would have gone around the same route that you guys looked at this. But if you look at how the work environment is now shifting, you're moving into a space where it's essentially the gig economy, where you've got individuals where they're not necessarily needed there 5 days a week, like you said, maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week. And I'd even say that could become more nuanced depending on how specialized that individual is. It might just be per contract or a project. And that means that you could create more value, and there'll be a definitive shift in your pay. But that means you're going to have a lot more time on your hands. And it's in that time where things get really interesting, because like the question that comes up is, well, who are you without your work? Who are you without the thing that you do, that you've associated with doing? Because then it comes back to the fundamental principle: you're not a human doing, you're a human being.
Yeah. It's a fun game, isn't it?
Yeah.
From a place of, I guess, one of my favorite resources for guys, because when we talk about vision, guys are like, oh, okay, cool, I've got to figure out what my vision is. I'm like, no, I had a guy reach out to me today, and he's just like, dude, I'm not in a good place. I've written something down. Can I share it with you? And it was all darkness, like all these things where he was in his life. And I was like, he's like, I don't know where to start. I was like, dude, best news is you've started. You've found out your truth of where you are. And I'd like to kind of share with the guys, we have what's called a scorecard inside the group, which is in the link will be in the show notes. And it just gives you a really good starting point and clarity on where you are right now, because without that, it's very, very hard to get to where you want to go. It's like being in Sydney. It's like aiming to go to Sydney, but not knowing if you're starting in Perth, Melbourne, New Zealand, South Africa. Like, you've got to know where you're starting to actually understand the path that you're getting there. And I think that's one of the hardest things for guys. And like we said at the start of the podcast, when you've got time, we should be thinking about those things, but we don't, because we avoid them. So I really want to share that with the guys. The scorecard in the group is an absolute game changer, and it'll gives you a score. That's why it's called a scorecard, of like where you are relative to the stats on other men, but also gives you an indication of where you are in your own life. And yeah, if you want that, just grab it from the notes. Have you guys got anything else you want to share with the men around how they can enjoy success, being already there, but not feel that emptiness of like, trying to always get to what's next, or I thought this place would be better?
If they don't already know, I'd suggest figuring out what your values are. Like, you can find that as simple as, like, if you don't know where to start, just Google values survey on Google. A bunch will come up. That'll give you a starting point, and you can cross-reference those for where you're at the moment. So, like, if you rate yourself based on, 1 to 5, each of those, look at decisions that you've made maybe in the past that, based on your decision haven't worked out. You haven't been in a good place mentally, physically, haven't liked it. Maybe look at which values you were misaligned with at that point in time, or times where you felt the most fulfilled, you were just loving life, everything was going well, you're on top of the world. What values were you maybe in alignment with at that point? That can give you a bit of feedback so that, when you're looking at making a decision, if you have to make sacrifices to achieve that next level of growth, or that next thing that you're aiming for, if some of those things that you have to sacrifice are also your highest value, then maybe you can second guess that. Or maybe you can look at, is there another way that I can still achieve this thing without having to sacrifice that thing? So, for me, would I like to make $10 million this year? Yes, that would be fantastic. Would I be willing to work 15 hours a day and sacrifice time with my family and my own health in order to achieve that? No, that's not worth it to me, right? And so when you know what you are and aren't willing to sacrifice, it can make things a lot clearer. And then if you're not feeling fulfilled, where you can start to then find that fulfillment in that success, not just in your career and financially, but across the board.
But what if it was an AI OnlyFans?
Well, then do I have to sacrifice my values? Being family and health.
Making $10 million.
I have low ethical values, so don't question me on that one, bro. You know my sense of humor. You know that one go well.
How good. How good. What about you, Nick? Have you got anything to share with the legends?
I think the last thing is, if you're finding yourself slightly triggered, and this brought some awareness up for you, consider building a home within yourself versus a home for other people. Start there. Start within yourself.
Nick always takes us deep. Swings to the fence, eh?
I write them down and I stick it on my laptop, and I'm like, I'm going to use that one today. Yeah.
That's a 12-incher. Let's do it.
That's a 12-incher.
That's
so
a 12-incher. There you go.
Yeah, good. Well, guys, that is the start of 2025. I hope you have not come to this part of January and started failing on your goals already. If you want resources like the 90-day game plan, access to having a chat with a coach about getting clarity, the scorecard, we have put it all in one place for you. There's actually some other really killer shit in there as well. When we finally got off the chaotic world that is Facebook and trying to give people a really nice sort of sequential path to their success inside the group. You can get that in the show notes. If this has been helpful for you, or you've listened to our podcast before and you've enjoyed them, please share them, drop us a comment. We love our egos being stroked. Please don't leave a comment if it's bad. You don't want to hear about it. So have an awesome January.
Into a tailspin.
Exactly, eh? Yeah. Life's bad enough. It's tough, and then somebody goes and throws a comment at you like that. But have an awesome January, guys. Big love to you. Thank you for listening. Go get after it.